Hello everyone! Hello YouTube, hello if you're on the stream live, welcome to the stream once again. So I'm back today playing some Civilization 6. I love this game, and actually today I was planning to probably record myself playing a few of the early turns. Maybe, I'm not exactly sure how long we're gonna go for, maybe a turn 30 or 50, we'll see. And basically walk you through my decision making and how I do start, and point you towards some of the important factors to take into consideration, such as the government plaza and and planning your cities as well from your start. So I thought it'd be a good idea. It's something that many people asked me to do, and I think actually we should just hop in and try to do that right now. I'm probably still going to go on online speed because this is going to be aimed at multiplayer. So it is very similar to how you start in single player, except you do have to take into consideration there's other players in the game, and you may have to adjust your start depending on if you have neighbors or not and who the neighbors are. So we'll try to cover as much information as we can, but we will also try to be as simple as it is because this is the very first time we record such a video, so it is aimed for like beginners as well. Just because, sorry, just because we are going to record this in single player, and we want to give it infinite turn timer, because we do want to be sure to have time to say everything, talk through everything, and be sure that you understand all the details. If you do have questions, you can always ask them on stream. I'll be opening my page right now, so yeah, it's right open, so I'll be able to see you live and I guess discuss with me. You'll be able to discuss with me. So right now this looks fine. The goal is just to play a few turns. We're playing without any mods at the moment, and the Civ doesn't relate too much. There's only a few Civs that have a specific strategies in the beginning. Most of them have a general consensus, general basis.
From the first stirrings of life beneath water.
Yeah, most of them have a general line of thought that you need to take into consideration, even though each civilization has its own bonuses, right? So, but today the goal is not to talk about each Civ bonus and how they work with the start. Today is to go to the basics, to understand some of the mechanics and understand some of like how are you supposed to actually play in multiplayer and how you're supposed to start as well to ensure you a good game from the classical era and so on.
Ready to strike out across the seas to spread the good word about your most holy empire. May the treasures they uncover fuel your quest to unite the world under one faith and one empire, making you truly the most Catholic king.
We're actually the most Catholic king. Well, we rolled Spain, which is actually a perfect example for this start. I mean, Spain does have some bonuses for other continents with missions and like some other stuff with trade routes later on, but it is an example of how Civ can start very basic at the beginning without any more. There's not much more to add to this actual start. Like you just look at the bonuses, they all come relatively late. None of them will help us in the very few turns, so we will be able to understand most of the mechanics with this new civilization. But obviously this is played in Gathering Storm, so this is fully updated. Maybe I'm gonna get better, maybe players will get better at the game as well as we go on, but for now we will record this and I hope you will enjoy. So welcome, it's 11 a.m. here in Canada, and there you go. We got actually a pretty strong start for Spain, I would say. We have just in our capital range a 1-4 deer tile, which is probably one of the best tiles you could get early on, besides maybe some spices or some very heavy food tiles. So I would be pretty happy, but like as usual, you do want to get your first settler right. So I will probably re-record a video about this. I already have a video on how to settle multiplayer, but I will probably re-record this. But for now, as usual, what you want to do is check the settler lance, which is number 4. Check, okay, so I don't see anything in the range, and I actually noticed that in Gathering Storm, sometimes you do not spot the other city. Sometimes there's a bug. So sometimes, even though you are in range of a city, the red tiles won't appear, but sometimes they still do. So it's a good idea to hit 4 and try to get this worked up. And I think I got enough information. Like going down here would have revealed me 2 tiles extra. So personally, I would not move the warrior here or here, because I do think whatever those tiles are, this is the prime city location we are looking for. The reason why is because in multiplayer, you rarely want to have a city that has more than one coastal tile. Okay, so in if you can avoid it, I'll actually try to avoid being on the coast. But here, for the housing, we're going to stay on the coast. Obviously, going away from the coast would be a huge mistake, right? Because you have to remember that settling on the coast gives an extra housing, and freshwater is +3, right? And if you would settle here, for example, no water, would have less housing, so the city would have a lot of trouble growing. And especially with this low amount of food, it would be a huge mistake not to settle on the coast. So this being said, we do want to settle on the coast, but we do not want to open up the capital more than one coastal tile, because in case there's someone else coming in with, let's say, frigates, for example, later in the game, then you want to be as safe as possible. You only have one tile there they can possibly take your city with a melee ship. So that's the big rationale. Another one is, in general, if you go coastal, you need to focus both land army and navy, which might become a huge investment in the mid to late game. But here we have no choice. Anyway, we have Spain, so Spain could actually utilize lots of the naval bonuses later in the game. So it's actually okay to sell coastal. You just have to remember this is part of the game when you play one of those civilizations, right? And so moving here would open me to 3 coastal tiles in here. If I go here, would only have 2, but here's a turn 2 settle, and there's nothing really that proves me that there's going to be something interesting there. Just by looking at the capital, I see that there is some hills right there, so we will have a decent amount of production. The only thing we might lack is a little bit of food, but at the same time, I do really like when we sell coastal to stay on low amount of food. So let's just go ahead and sell the city. I'm pretty sure this is the prime location for all those reasons. Okay. The reason why I like to stay on low food in the beginning of the game, which is counterintuitive for many players, is that you don't have to improve many tiles for your city to be as efficient as possible. So for example, this city will work this tile here, obviously because this is the strongest tile we've got, and we'll have a lot of production for the early game. And at the same time, growing to 2 population is not too hard, so you have to remember that growing to population 2 takes, let's go actually check the numbers since we're there. It's probably right there. Okay, it doesn't say the exact number of food, I never actually checked this, but you basically grow faster to population 2 than you would to population 3, 4, and so on. So basically you require less food to get to 2 population than required to get to 3 and 4 and 5, and the more you go on, the more food you need for each population point. So by keeping growing the city back to 2 population, you actually utilize your food in a much more efficient way. So let's say we go for settlers out of the city, we'll lose a population, we'll go back to 1, but that 1 will grow back to 2 really quickly, compared to if we were to not do a settler, wait for the 3rd population, and this 3rd population would take a lot of food. So this is the mentality that I'm thinking when I see coastal start like this. I might do other videos on how to start, and they might be completely different concepts, but this is the first thing that comes to mind with this kind of start. And obviously, since we settle turn 1, well, I guess from the beginning we get to choose what we want. And the expansion, I personally really like to go for animal husbandry, because we discover the horses, and this often gives very strong tiles to work. And just by looking at our setup right now, I don't see many things around, so there's probably some stuff we could discover. I have a huge feeling that the horses might appear, and anyway, we do need the animal husbandry to improve the deer if we wanted to, so it's always a strong choice. The second choice people often choose in the early game is often mining. The reason why is because mining is on the way to encampments and swordsman and iron. So if you want to stay more defensive or even offensive, you can go push with swordsman units. And if you want a general, well, often you need to already from the beginning think about going for the encampment, which is often the rationale people do in the team games or some other games like this. So this is what I would do here, but I think I would go for animal husbandry, which is very safe as well. The horses I think are much stronger in the expansion than they used to because of the resources cap, so it means you can get a few horses and still be able to defend against a few units. That's my impression on it. And almost all the time I will suggest you to go for a scout. Here's the same thing again. The reason why we go for the scout first is, well, we do play with huts in multiplayer and we do play with city-states as well, so that means that we can get first meets. So if you feed city-state first, you'll get an envoy in it, and this envoy will provide you some yields, so such as if it's a gold city-state, it'll provide you 2 gold per turn if you're the first one to meet it. So the scout is very valuable, and the huts will pay the scout off even if you get only 1 or 2. And even if you get nothing, let's say like you're incredibly unlucky, you still get to see what's around and plan for the future, so it is still a good investment. So 1 scout, many players would eventually do 2, even with 3 scouts in some cases. But my favorite build is really a 1 scout, which is what I'm going to show you today. I'm not saying everything is optimal, like there's always other options that can always be done. But from my experience, this is my favorite way to open up a game. And the reason why I went north is because with my warrior, I will probably try to do some sort of circle and bring him back. So in about, let's say, I don't know, maybe 10 turns, I'll be having a settler almost ready. So my goal is to circle, maybe go grab the hut, and come back in this direction, and then be able to escort my settler. You have to remember that in multiplayer, sometimes it can be pretty rough. Players may try to steal your settlers and your builders, so it's really good to have your first warrior as an escort if you can. And this setup is very good for it because there's a lot of flat tiles, so the warrior actually can explore really well and come back. So we're lucky on that sense. And by bringing back the warrior, it means the scout can, for example, go scout south and be very efficient as well. And from the beginning, already explore all those tiles. So if you go, they'll turn like right now. I decided to go north with the warrior and go do a circle, but I could have done it south or east or west depending on the map. And the scout will just go in a different direction to find more information as well. So this is what we're gonna do. We're going to go straight towards the hut here. Taking huts can be sometimes good. It might be good to delay in some occasions, especially if you're 100% sure that nobody could find or has found a hut. Like if you play on a map like islands, if you play, I don't know, in some sort of like weird peninsula that you already know the only entrance is yours. Well, you could delay taking huts if you want to get better huts in the later stage of the game. But often, the bonuses you get from the huts can snowball your game much quicker if you take them early. So I suggest you to take the huts as soon as you find them. And also, you don't forget them. And yeah. So sometimes also the later stage of the game, you get some issues with the turn timer if you don't have enough time to end your turn. So it might be good to just take them at the beginning since you have a lot of time, generally speaking. I also suggest you don't take any huts before you settle the city, because if you settle a city, it gives you more options of like very strong stuff you could get. I'm not saying you won't get strong stuff without a city, but I'm just saying that you have more odds of actually getting something interesting once your city is settled. But for us, it's not a problem. We already settled the city, so right now we're gonna go take away and just go take the hut for now. And wow, look at this, a scout, which is actually a perfect find. Like. So scout is one of the best things I think we could get from the hut. Although on this map I'm not sure it's the best thing because it looks like it might be continent or island, I'm not sure, but it looks like it's already the end of my island over there, so we have maybe less area to scout, but obviously we could not know from the beginning that was the case. So as I said, we bring a scout south. Oh, Looks like it's already the end on that side too. Since I have two, I'll still spend the movement to go check further in the water, just because I'm curious. Maybe for future I could try to plant some settles. And this one will probably go in that direction here while the warrior comes back to escort the settler. So for now we're going to go here, and there's no need going to explore there. This scout will probably go in that direction as well. That's my thinking. So as you might have noticed, we've produced that scout relatively quickly because we have a 1-4 tile from the beginning, and this is the strength of this kind of start. So when you decide to go for every production, then you can transition into a few things. You can transition into maybe a monument if you want, maybe a granary if you want pottery, but in general it's not a strong start. Generally you want to go a monument, a builder, or a settler. In this case here, I would have two choices in mind. I personally would go for either a settler or a builder. Not saying the monument is a bad choice. The monument will obviously be a strong choice, but monument often is good when you have a lot of resources in the second ring tile that you absolutely want to grab and you don't want necessarily to buy them. So if you go for monument, for example, your city borders will grow quicker, so you won't have to buy as many tiles as you need. However, here, I'm not saying the tiles are bad outside the capital, but we don't have that strong tiles either. So the monument is not as efficient as we could think. The other advantage of going for the monument is you get the government quicker and cards quicker, which is probably the reason why we would do it in that case. So there are cards like really quickly here that allows you to produce settlers faster for 50%, or craftsmanship here to produce builders, and which are very, very strong cards for the early game. Or even you can get the boat card right here. Yeah, 100% for boats straight from at the beginning. So those are all very strong cards when you have such a low amount of production in the early game. My favorite one being the settler one, because we need to get a lot of cities. But again, in this case, I do not think the monument would outvalue a builder or a settler. So the settler rationale would be the same as I was explaining before. If we go for a settler, that means that our second population that we will get will very quickly will be out of the city, so the city will be able to grow back to another population much quicker. And this settler will be able to maybe find another prime location for a city with more food, or another city with heavy production to make settlers itself. So the settler makes a lot of sense here and would be the best choice if it was not for some early wonders that I will explain now. But so if you were to go for a settler, you probably would have to use a technique that we call the shift enter, which I will demonstrate right now. Okay, so the shift, basically there's a concept that if you choose nothing in your city and your turn ends, the production is not lost. So right now I'm doing 7 production a turn in my city. If I end my turn, this 7 production will accumulate into the next turn. So I'll show you this right now. So look at, for example, look, this 3 turns for a builder, 5 turns for a settler, and so on. So we will simply shift enter here, and we'll do the demonstration for the next turn. So let's go into city, let's go produce. The builder is now 2 turns, settlers 4 turns. So as you can see, I still have my production saved up, and I still can build stuff, and it would basically, I didn't lose a single turn even though I didn't choose anything in my city. And this allows us, for example, to get a settler as soon as we get 2 population. So if you look at the math, like we grow in 3 turns, so that means that in 3 turns we will have 2 population. In 3 turns it'll be only 1 turn for a settler. So that means that in 4 turns exactly, we can finish that settler. So this is the strength of this kind of start. You do have the 1-4 tile here that allows you to do this kind of cheesy strategy and utilize the mechanics and the food mechanics and stuff like this. This being said, this is probably the strongest way to start the game, to do like the 1-4 and go into a settler, in my opinion, because this other city will grow itself as well. You have to remember that when you get a city, you have a citizen that works the population, and the tile itself. So the very first citizen of the city is actually more valuable than all the further citizens, because by himself he's actually producing using 2 tiles instead of 1. So this is why going for settler first is very strong. But there's also a very strong wonder, and since we went for animal husbandry, we do have to introduce this kind of strategy here. There is a wonder called the Artemis Temple. So it's unlock at archery. It's on the way for animal husbandry, and we went to animal husbandry first. So it is something to really consider in that scenario. So I will open up the Wikipedia for you, so you'll be able to see what this wonder does. Let's go get the wonder here. Our Temple of Artemis. There you go. Each camp, pasture, plantation improvement within 4 tiles of this wonder provides 1 amenity, and it must be placed adjacent to a adjacent to a camp improvement, not barbs. So it is a relatively easy wonder to get in some starts. Like ours, we have a deer, so it's relatively easy, and it gives 4 food and 3 housing as well. So while this is very strong, the amenity bonus actually is really significant. The 3 housing is even more significant, especially on coastal sites. So this is a wonder that is heavily prioritized in many multiplayer games because of the 3 housing, and the 4 food basically allows you to grab those housing as soon as possible. And if you look at our start, we do like a lot of food. So this wonder is particularly good because we would want to get a relatively strong capital, and this is a relatively easy investment, easy way to invest into food for the later stage of the game. So from this point on, you would have to choose between either you go for a settler for another city, or you go for a builder, and the builder would allow you to get the camp improved here on the deer, and once the camp is improved, you'll be able to place down the Artemis Temple. Builder is kind of like a prerequisite for the Artemis Temple. You cannot do the Artemis Temple without a builder, so you have to go for the builder. And since from what we see right now, we will scout a little bit more, as I explained a little bit earlier, using the same scouting patterns I was saying. So we go here, this guy will come back and like possibly score a settler. That's still the plan here. But since we look at this map and we did not see a awesome city location, right? Like even we can open the settler lands, it's nothing amazing to really see. I do strongly think that the settler first here might not be the best play. The best play is to try your luck and try to get the Artemis Temple. Obviously it's a coin flip because some other players might try it, but if you go to the very first city and you save all your production for it, you have often a very, very strong chance of getting it. So what we're gonna do here, we're gonna go for a builder first. Builder second, with for scout first. So there you go. Let's go finish our turn.
I am fond of pig.
It looks like there's a barb camp that just spawned there. That's actually quite interesting. So we'll keep exploring with those 2 scouts. This is what they are for. You can always press the settler lands. Look at this river here. Actually, this would have been a relatively strong settle spot, but I still think that just because it's a little further out, the Artemis Temple play is very strong. So we're going to attempt it right now. And since there's a barb camp that spawned there, in online speed, you do want to try to clear them to try to prevent barbs from slowing down your first city, especially in the Artemis Temple build, because often the barbs come up, find you, and they block you from like pillage your camp and block you from doing the Artemis Temple. And the second thing is you actually get gold and era score from killing it, so it might be very strong. So in that sense, I would highly suggest you to go back, kill the scout and kill the barb. So this is what we're going to do right here with this warrior. I'm going here to have more vision and more control over this area. If I could have won there, but at the same time the scout would have been would have had more options to go towards my city. So I prefer going here and hitting the scout once this way. And there you go. Hello Lollipop, welcome in. So from this position again, the scout is not a huge threat. We want to get the barb camp, so I would probably position myself here, and this turn I would attack because I'd still have over 80% HP. If you have less than over 80% HP, often it's better to heal up and wait a few turns to get to maximize amount of damage on the barb here. But because we play on online speed and each movement is really timed and is equivalent to a lot of time in the game, I would probably hit him once and then heal up to try to save some experience. And we also get level 2 as well. So we will scout as usual, keep going this way. There you go. So next turn we'll be able to find much more. You always press the settler lens 4. Ah, there will be something in that direction. So next turn we will have to walk there and try to find out what it is, maybe quickly. Because if it is a city state, we want to be the very first one to meet it. And sometimes it might be a difference between an envoy or not. So you want to go there as quickly as you can. And as I was saying, you will go here on the deer, and we will improve the deer because we are going for the Artemis Temple. As simple as that. And what do we do in our city now? Well, we will be actually using again the strategy of the shift enter. So we start producing the Artemis Temple before we even have the technology. That's basically what it means. And so I'll go in to demonstrate it with you right now. I'm playing on deity, so there's a high chance that we won't get it. But in multiplayer, this kind of strategy works very often. So I will show it for you. Let's go next turn right now. So this I got a promotion. I like to take this one, Battle Cry, early because it's just easier to clear barb camps with it. This is situational. You can, if there's a lot of archers or other units, you can take this. Like if you're fighting against quadriremes, like let's say they shoot at your warrior while you try to take out a camp, it can be strong. But in general, Battle Cry is the best one. Let's go here, Cahokia. And we should have done first. See, like I made a mistake. We should have went there first, then promote this. And when you find a city state, I always suggest you to go check if you're the first one. We are the first one because we got one envoy in it, and it gives us +4 gold per turn. So it was worth it to go for this. And we always get to check the quest as well. Holy Site, we will see if we do a Holy Site for another envoy. So this is why we go for scouts early, because we want to get some city states like this. You also have to remember that in the expansion, if you turn on, like, there's an option here to put on desert labels, mountain range, and everything. So it might give you some information of who might be close or who might have discovered which area. So this is to keep in mind as well if you want to try to scout your area as efficiently as possible and predict where your opponents are. And in our case, it's actually quite easy to apply because we know that if there's anyone, they're all going to be in that direction. So when we get to plan cities, we'll probably go in that direction as well to try to get grab as much land as we can. So this city has grown. It's taking the production, which is exactly what we want because we want to start producing the Artemis Temple. We don't necessarily want the food. And we will improve the camp right here. So an extra gold, so we'll be able to possibly buy a monument or possibly buy some stuff that might be useful later. We will do the shift enter technique once again.
It is not wisdom, but...
So we are done Code of Law here. From this start, since we are going for an early wonder, and this wonder will give us some food and population, we will probably want to go for a lot of settlers to catch up because we'll only have one city. So my goal in most games is to try to grab the colonization card as early as possible. And with that in mind, I would probably start with foreign trade because it's on the way. It's not because those cards are not good, because they actually are very strong, both of them. If you want a war early, if you need a lot of builders early, those are the strongest cards. But foreign trade, I do believe with this setup, we could find a second continent, and so in case we do find one, we would have this done already and be able to possibly grab early empire as quickly as possible to grab the settler card. So this start here requires us to go wide, so it requires us to go a lot of settlers. So that's why the settler card, which is actually stronger than the builder cards because it's 50% against 30, is the most valued card we would want for this type. So it is very important to go towards this card. But it's not necessarily a bad play to go for craftsmanship, because you'll be able to get 2 farms if you want for the boost, if that's what you desire. But I do think that those 2 farms are not that valuable in our situation, because we actually are going for the Artemis Temple, and we will not be working those tiles, at least in the near future. So we will keep shift entering the capital, try to complete the Artemis Temple, and actually I would probably save at least 1 charge on the builder, depending on what you have. But if you have a second tile that is very strong to work, I encourage you to go improve it as well, because you'll often be on 2 populations and possibly growing as well at this stage. You could argue that here going for the farm would be a very strong second improvement, because we would get the boost for irrigation, and we could technically grow the city as well. We could, instead of taking the 1-2, we could take a 3-1 tile. I think both can be argued as good choices, but this is a little bit an all-in strategy, so I would probably still work the 1-2 tile here against the 3-1 tile. But nonetheless, we'll go improve the farm, because it will still give us a boost, which is always a good thing to have. And as you can see, we don't have that many of the, well, I guess we could have had some here as well, but it's not that many farms that could have been done in the early game. So I always put the settler lands, you don't see anything else further. This is fully healed now, so we can hit again. Actually, we probably should have waited to put this card here to hit even stronger. Although since we have 2 scouts, it's not that bad of an idea to go for this card here. The scouting experience can be good to explore more. Even if you're playing Kree, for example, it can be very strong to get leveled up as Kree scouts. But I find personally that if you have a lot of barbs, it's better to take the +5 and get all this gold quicker, because when you clear a camp, you get gold and everything. So this card is my favorite for the early game, but this start here dictates us for this card here. And we do want a Pantheon, so since we have no fate income, we will have to go for God King. There is ways to not go for a Pantheon in the early game, but I will for now suggest you always go for a Pantheon, just because it's a relatively safe play. And we do have a lot of production capital, so we don't necessarily need to go for this. And the extra production this would give is good, would possibly make the Artemis Temple finish quicker. But we have to remember that the science is actually something that is blocking us as well from placing it down. So the goal is to have roughly as much production as we need for the Artemis Temple when we finally finish the technology for it. So in that sense, this is strong, but the goal of having a Pantheon is even more strong. So we're going to go for the +1 fate to turn, which also gives a gold, which is so it's a relatively decent card. So here we will do the shift enter technique once again. Yeah, the scouts actually have some improvements. I think there's now a new tier of units. The scouts actually can be good in the mid stage of the game as well. So it's valuable to have the scout, this survey card if we want it, because those scouts will have 1 range attack. So if we manage to get them level 3, they can be very, very powerful in medieval era. So here, do we need the gold this turn or not? That's the question I would ask myself. So we will go for the farm as I was explaining earlier, and we will probably work in the city, the production still. And here, do we need the gold or not? That's the question. So we've got 68 gold, and what could we buy plus 50 gold? If we get 50 gold this turn, we get 118 gold. So we'd be able to buy everything except the settler and monument. However, if we wanted to buy anything, I think it would be the monument at this point, because we're lacking culture. So it is better to heal up a turn and wait, because we wouldn't have enough gold to buy monument anyway. So we will heal up, wait, and next turn take out the camp to be able to get our monument at the same time. So you don't even delay the monument by doing so. You just heal up, get more HP on your warrior. And now we've got enough gold for monument if we take the camp, so we're going to do it. 3 era score, which is always good. We buy here the monument. Ah, okay, I miscalculated. You could actually wait an extra turn. So we could have waited another turn here to heal up. That was a mistake on my part. An envoy while we're lucky. The envoys, oh, hello Rome. So the envoys, I try to, in general, save them unless I can get a suzerain. So here, I only have 1 envoy, and only one here, and we need 3 to suzerain the city-state. So I would not send it in Cahokia yet, I would wait and discover more, because we never know, this envoy could be useful in other city-state as well, and doesn't give us any bonus to place it right now, so we want to keep it as it is for now. And since we went for in trade, it actually opens up the path for mysticism, so we can get another envoy to suzerain the city-state, which may allow us to get era score for Golden Age, for example, or simply start stacking up those favor points by being suzerain, get 1 per turn. So that could be the goal here. We'll again do the shift enter strategy to finish the turn here. I still have to give you a warning that when you do shift enter, you do have to make sure all your units moved. So because the units won't, it basically ends your turn. So you have to go cycle through your units, make sure you did all the movements you wanted to do. So you go there, and here the scout will go see what's actually happening for Rome, right? We try to test the waters, try to predict what he's doing, because if you, let's say he wants to settle here, we have to make sure to actually grab those settles before he settles too aggressively. So, and we want to know where he goes, and maybe keep a scout that in case if you want to try very mean strategies to stealing builders or settlers, you can keep it around if it doesn't escort them. So that's the rationale going in that direction. And here I would probably bring back the warrior towards my city to protect my improvements. So let's bring him here for now. And anyway, he heals faster in city borders, so it's better to bring him back home. This builder will stay in the city just to be safe, not to be taken by barbarians, obviously. And we're going to do again the shift enter strategy right here. So the Great Bath has been done, so which is not an issue for us. We don't even have a river, so it really doesn't matter at all. Another continent, so see the odds of finding another continent in the early game are relatively good, especially in the expansion, because they fixed a bug where if you spawn on 2 continents, you may not find another continent that easily, because you have to find a 3rd one. So now apparently this is fixed, so foreign trade is actually a relatively easy boost to get. So I really suggest you try this path in the next game if you want to see something a little bit different. So we still stacking up production. Next turn we'll be able to place down the Artemis Temple. We have to make sure all our units moved. They all moved, yep. And there you go, we end our turn.
May the forces of evil.
So we'll keep scouting. Same kind of deal. We'll just go here. So it looks like they actually passes barely, but this is probably a prime location for Canal City or canals in the future. And since we play Spain, you have to remember that you have to play for the mid to late game. So you already have to start planning where and how you will play this game. And just by looking at this map, you can predict that we will have to play very coastal heavy. So you probably want to grab this whole coastline here and probably try to gain advantage from going navy. So my plan for this game would, for example, try to set up a defensive line here around the Cahokia border, so Rome doesn't kill us, and it would also require us very few units because we do have mountains, we do have lots of hills, so it's really easy to defend. And then we would be able to plant our cities we need and maybe go in a more tall play because we're lacking a little bit of room. But we're still going to scout a little more. It's going to give us some more information of what to do. And this turn we finished the Artemis Temple technology, so it's only 3 turns to complete it. I would probably go for the desert tile here because it's in range of 1 plantation there, and also because the desert tile in itself is not that strong of a tile. We could save those tiles for pyramids, but I think you can do the same for Artemis Temple here. You have to remember you have to place down the Artemis Temple next to the camp you built, so one of those 5 tiles are available right now. But the desert tile is the least valuable tile, so we're gonna take it for the Artemis Temple. If you're very worried that you might lose the Artemis Temple, you always have that builder and you can chop a forest. But in general, if you do this strategy, you are able to get it even without chopping, so because you saved up so much production for it. So from the start now, we got 2 technologies and we have to choose what's the path. So which kind of strategy we want to go further, we want to go coastals, maybe we want to go boats. But is the boat technology really worth it yet? That's the question, because we have not many improvements to do in the sea. We might have some crabs later, but the crabs even then are not that strong improvements. Well, if you play with the mod, it gives an extra production though, so it gets pretty strong. But you can also use the crabs to chop them to get extra gold to upgrade all your frigates, for example, in the later stage of the game. So it's not necessarily tiles you want to improve quickly. This being said, you also have to check when's the next Golden Age, because you want to try to plan. Do I want a Dark Age or a Golden Age? And this you have to plan from the very beginning. Since we got 2 scouts, I personally would be very worried getting a Dark Age. I don't think a Dark Age is a valuable, like within 10 turns, the odds of us not getting enough points is relatively low. We have to get 5 points or less in 10 turns with 2 scouts. So either we don't scout with them, which is counterintuitive because we got the units and we don't gain any advantage, or we try to go for a Golden Age. And since we're going to go for the Artemis Temple here, the best play in my opinion is to try to attempt a Golden Age. So in that sense, you have to remember that getting a boat gives some era score as well, the very first boat. So sailing is still a very strong choice of a technology. And we do not need to go for mining because we're not in any danger from anyone close by. So if you were in danger, we go mining, we get an encampment, or even if you don't go for an encampment, just have the option in case the other player goes aggressive, so you have a response already prepared. But here we don't even need to prepare that response. So I would go for sailing. You could argue pottery could be strong because the granary might be a strong improvement, or even the astrology, because you could say we'll get the holy site for the city-state quest, and we'll be able to put an extra void for the era score. And maybe if you get an early religion, you can also get a lot of era score from that. But the holy site requires a relatively good. If you want to rush it, I think you really have to plan for a heavy religion game. And to me, this setup here would make a very hard religious game as well, because we're lacking a little bit of production, and often if you go religion, you need to have a lot of production in the early game to be able to make it work. So I do think we would have to attempt not to go for religious victory or heavy religion play. I'm not saying we won't do a religion, but in the ancient era it might not be necessarily the smartest choice. So I will go for a galley sailing, and this galley might allow us to find some more land as well. We never know, there might be some islands there that might be even better to colonize than our mainland. So the galley here is a much stronger pick than all the other technologies at this stage for those reasons. Obviously, whatever I'm saying here is always my opinion, right? Like, depending on who you're talking to, they might have different opinions and they might have different ways to play this beginning. But many players ask me to give my perception on how to play a start, and this is probably what I would think from this position here. So this builder is not useful. I recommend you don't use the charges when you don't need to, because you really have a limited amount of builders and charges for the game. It's getting more and more pricey to get builders, so if you don't need to improve any tile, don't. Especially in that scenario here, like we're working those 2 tiles, we cannot improve the forest, so then there's no way to really make the Artemis Temple go quicker. So we're gonna just keep him there. Keep scouting, try to find some interesting information.
Several closely situated granite peaks.
So if it was just me here, I'd be very worried, because Rome has actually got a natural wonder, and it would be like a player, so he wouldn't know how to utilize it. Though I guess this store is not necessarily the best, it's just food, right? But it's still very strong wonder, so. And we're happy we got the boost. So for me, from this position, especially if Rome is a strong player, I would play defensively. There's really very little you can do. You have to gain advantage mid to later game if you want to try to win or outplay him. You have to try to use the map against him, so you might have another neighbor, so you might be able to 2 versus 1 in the early game. And anyway, the distance is 2-way to try any type of rush, so if you wanted to go for horse rush or swords rush and everything, and it's Rome again, he gets his legions pretty early, so by the time you would get there, you would get a special unit and you probably would get crushed, so it's not a good idea to try to kill the player that early. And all this being said, we don't even have horses, so we were unlucky in our start. You have to remember, we started Animal Husbandry hoping to find horses to have a good tile to work, and we failed. We don't have horses in our capital, so it's really not necessarily the strongest start we've got. In order to meet you, so whenever you meet someone, be sure to know where you met them, right? Okay, met them right there. You can always click on the icon. So we have a rough idea. Poland is in this area as well. Like, we might try to... we see the border there, so we know it's right south. So it's actually good news for us. They might be fighting for land, might be fighting with some units, losing some production, so could be good for us. And I also always suggest you to get the promotion as quickly as you can in your scout, but first utilize as many movements as you can. So here we had a promotion, but I decided to move on the hill, and then I promote probably for the hills in general. This is very often the strongest choice, because even if it's a forest hill, you get the extra faster movement on it, as opposed to the forest. You might not be able to get as much movement, and you also get more vision, because when you're in hills, you might be able to see further. In general, this is the stronger one. Another detail, since we found a hut here, and just by looking at the map, we could possibly assume there might be nothing here or no other player, maybe a city-state. You can always check the settler lands if we want to check. There's no red tiles there. We can check here. There's a loyalty drop, so it helps us to know how many cities there is in this area. So we will still go grab the hut here, but we probably expect to have no players in that area, because the hut is already turned 16, and players often try to get the huts as quickly as they can. So turn 16 is getting fewer and fewer huts left on the map, unless you're left all alone, obviously. And I realize that I'm talking so much because I'm trying to explain so many things. We forgot to buy that monument a few turns ago, so I'm gonna go ahead and buy it now. So we would have already got foreign trade, but this is my mistake again. Let's go next turn.
When I saw the house of Artemis that mounted to the clouds, those other marvels lost their brilliancy, and I said, lo, apart from Olympus, the sun never looked on aught so grand.
Such an inspiring quotation right there. So we got the Artemis Temple,
lives by exchange,
and we even got the Devon government, which is very cool. Let's do the government first, because we got this page open. Since we went for the galley here, technology, let's go for the galley card, obviously. So this galley card will give us a lot of... we probably will be able to get 2 ships instead of 1, because it's 100%. So we'll be able to get the boost for the other naval tech further on the tree, and explore the whole area as well, to guarantee us a golden age, because if we find more natural wonders or more players, we will get more era score. So we'll go for this one, and then we will also change this, because oh no, we won't change it because we don't have a Pantheon yet, so we have to keep it until we have a Pantheon. So we confirm policies just this way. And since we got now a new barb camp, well, guess what? We're gonna go towards that barb camp to try to take it down. I don't necessarily want to hit the scout here, so we're gonna go on the hill to have more vision and see what's around and see if there's other barbs lurking. So we're gonna go here. And as you can see, since we got the Artemis Temple, suddenly we've got an insane amount of growth in the city. And we got 2 out of 8 housing, so we can grow as much as we want. We have no issues. So we would now switch to this style here to try to grow the city. And we will go for early empire, try to get it as quickly as we can to get the settler card right when we need it, when we get off of the Pantheon card. Although I will most games I never wait for the car to actually go for my first settler. So here the next thing I would do is actually the settler. Even though we lose the population, we will settle it back very quickly, so it might not even delay us that long on this early empire. And at the same time, setting a new city will, as I was explaining earlier, is basically like working 2 tiles instead of 1 with that 1 population. So you do want to get the cities quickly out. And also you grow the borders and you grow everything much quicker if you have another city. Delaying the cities always has this disadvantage of like waiting for all the rest. So like the city will be smaller if you settle it later because it won't have as much time to grow as otherwise. So I'm gonna just play a few more turns. We've been talking for a long time already. As you can see, it takes a lot of time to explain every single decision. We're gonna go grab sailing, and then I'll probably stop the video and maybe do a part 2 later to explain how I would continue this game here. For this builder, I would probably go here. Just do a few more turns still to try to discover the map. Let's go here. Maybe this is one of the cases where I would actually take the rainforest because there's so many around, and I'm not necessarily expecting to move a lot and to discover a lot. I just want to find as many players as possible. So I do want to try to go for the rainforest here. And we don't kill the scout here. We're more focused on the hut. So we're gonna go get the hut. And wow, what a lucky find! So unless you do some strategies like holy sites and other early strategies, or if you rush an encampment because you're defending, state workforce is a relatively hard boost to get in multiplayer. So finding it in the hut is actually very good. Let's go here. There's a desert actually. The reason why I get my builder out now is because I'm curious to see what's out there too. If there's more barbs, I want to know as quickly as possible. So I'm gonna go here. Probably Cahokia is hitting the barb camp, so we might miss the opportunity to kill it. We'll find out soon. And the builder only is only 1 charge, so we don't lose much by moving it up. So we go here. And if you lose it, probably we'll go back in this barb camp, which is on the way for the next city, which is where we will probably use the builder if you're asking. So this is like what I would do in that situation still, even without any escort. Let's go here. Okay, interesting. Let's go to sailing, and then we're gonna change
Vessel's large.
video. So Cahokia got a barb camp, which I don't mind too much, and from this position I would probably go south to probably escort that our settler here. We grow to population, we can always check which side it's taking. 1 2 tile, which is fine. We don't have much more to grow with this here. Let's go check if there's barbs here, and we checked far enough. We don't need to go much further, so I would leave him there probably. And now from this position, we will always need mining in almost every single game. So if you didn't take it yet, it's always a strong choice. You could go for astrology if you want to go for religion, but as I was saying, I don't think in the ancient era is the best time to go for holy sites.
I have filled a water bag from my people and gone.
So as you can see, we got we don't have the scout card yet, but we have scouts up. We find some natural wonders to ensure we get the golden age. So it's looking very good right now as it is. So this is a very good setup. We probably want to go for move if they're attacking to go towards ambush, which is a +20 strength, which is the best promotion in the game possibly. So we go grab it. Let's move the scout up on the barb camp, and I think that's gonna be it. Turn 19. We're gonna do part 2 right afterwards. And thank you for watching. Thank you for also following me on YouTube and on everything. So enjoy your day and see you guys next time.